Joe Day, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to have you here at Ironworks. Glad to see you.
So you're getting a lot of national attention because you've positioned yourself as a moderate Republican in this race. So I want to kind of talk about what that means to you. And I think one position that's gotten the most attention is your position on abortion. Certainly. You said that you would vote to make Roe versus Wade law of the land, codify it. That's still your position?
It is. It
Okay.
is. I believe that for the first 5 months, a woman should have the right to choose. And after that, rape, incest, health of the mother, that decision should be between a woman and her doctor. She should have the right to choose. And that's how I'm going to vote.
There are some senators who brought up a version of that, not the Schumer plan, but a codification of Roe. And your campaign suggested that you want to attach all these other strings to it, like parental consent.
Well, it's developed a little bit. I like the bill. I've reached out to Senator Collins. I think they're on the right track. There's a few other things that I'd like to make sure that we clarify, especially on rape and incest. I want that to make sure that we have a woman's right to choose. I like parental notification. We have that here in Colorado. I think those are a couple of things that we should attach to that.
Do they have to be attached, or will you stand by your word that if it's a codification of Roe, you'll vote for it?
Well, here's the deal. I'm going to the Senate to negotiate a good bill that brings balance to women's rights. And I believe that if in the first 5 months a woman has the right to choose, that should be between her and her doctor. Rape, incest, health of the mother, that decision should be between a woman and her doctor, and I'm going to vote that way.
Do you understand how some people might say that you got a lot of positive attention for saying that you would codify Roe, and now when push comes to shove, you want to attach all these other things to it?
I understand that, but that's the debate that we're going to have. I'm going to vote exactly what I said, which is for the first 5 months, that should be a woman's decision between her and her doctor.
We also both know that the only way you'd ever vote on something like that is if Democrats run the Senate. Because if you succeed in flipping the Senate and Mitch McConnell's in charge, you're never going to be voting on putting Roe versus Wade into law.
I'm not sure that's the case. I think the country's ready for some balance. And that's why I'm going to Washington, to represent Colorado.
How about the current conversation about making same-sex marriage national law in case the Supreme Court were to come for that? A lot of Republicans are back and forth on that. What do you think?
I think we should make that the law. That should be the law of the land. They have their rights. They should keep them.
How about access to contraception? That's another worry.
Of course, they need contraception. We need that. That should be the law.
So suppose we're in a situation where Mitch McConnell is running the Senate again, and consistent with his beliefs, he brings forward a 22-week abortion ban, something that you've said that as a private citizen, as a voter, you voted for here in Colorado, a 22-week abortion ban. You would vote against that in the Senate?
Say that again, because I'm not sure what bill you're talking about.
Absolutely understand. You voted for the statewide proposition to ban abortion at 22 weeks when you were a private citizen.
After 22 weeks.
After 22 weeks, yes. If something similar were to come forward in the Senate, you would vote against that.
Well, I'd make sure that we included for rape, incest, and health of the mother as part of that. That's where I would go. That should be a woman's decision.
You've talked about the idea that you'd be kind of like a Republican Joe Manchin. I think Joe Manchin gets a lot of attention in Washington. He's a centrist Democrat from West Virginia who blocks a lot of the more liberal legislation because he feels like it goes too far on the left. Which of Mitch McConnell's priorities would you block because they're too conservative?
Well, if he tried to put a total ban, I would block that. There's a lot of things that I would block. I've stood apart from the Republican Party here. I was the very first one that came out and said that, Trump, the big lie, that was false. He's not our president. Biden's our president. I said that. I've said that several times. So there's a lot of places where I've bucked the party.
Let's explore a couple more of those beyond abortion and beyond Trump's election lies. What other priorities of Mitch McConnell would you pull a Joe Manchin on and move to the center?
Well, if we're going to secure the border, I would make sure that we included citizenship for the Dreamers. That's probably not something that's on a high priority for Republicans, but it is for me. And those are the kind of things that I would look at, something that benefits Colorado.
That position is identical with Mitch McConnell's, though. Mitch McConnell said secure the borders and deal with the Dreamers at the same time. You're in lockstep with him on that. So I'm trying to figure out, where exactly do you disagree with Mitch McConnell other than abortion? Because, he opposes Trump's big lie as well. So I'm trying to figure out, where's the distance between you guys? You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a lot of things that we probably do agree on. I'm a conservative. And I believe, in fiscal conservatism. And so those are things that are aligned with the Republican Party. I'm more of a social libertarian. I believe same-sex marriage. I believe in contraception. I believe in in an abortion law that promotes the first 5 months being the decision of a woman. And so those are the things that I've thought through.
You've stressed that you'd be willing to work with leaders of both parties to pass things that you think make sense. There are a number of President Biden's priorities that are held up in the Senate because Democrats can't get 60 votes. They can't get the Republicans to go along with it. You see anything left on the table that President Biden's put forward that you say, you know what, as a moderate Republican, I'd come in, I'd help him pass that even though it's stuck now?
I think we got to quit spending. That's been the problem with Biden's agenda. If you look at his agenda, we've dumped trillions of dollars into the market, caused record inflation. We've got record prices on gas here. We've got record crime in Colorado. That agenda is not working at all. And we need to repeal some of those laws. We need to be clear about our priorities. We should be working on securing the border. If you talk to any of the cops here in Colorado, they'll tell you that fentanyl's killing our kids at record levels, comes straight up I-25. Cartels in our neighborhoods now. We've got to get our border secured. At the same time, we need to promote our cops here in Colorado. And I would take this last bill, the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden has pushed through that doesn't reduce inflation. What it does is add 87,000, 40,000 IRS agents, depending on who's counting them, and they're going to shake down Americans for more taxes. Let's take that money and let's put that on border security, and let's put money into our state and our local cops so we can hire more cops. That's where I think our priorities are, and those are the priorities I'll chase.
Let's talk about that. You and I both know that the IRS wants to staff back up to current levels so that they can make sure that wealthy Americans are paying the taxes that they owe. There's a $600 billion tax gap between what's legally owed and what's paid. So you want to defund the guys that police our tax laws? Because you know the people they're looking at are the wealthiest Americans like you and like Senator Bennett. They're not looking at ordinary Americans.
No, they're looking at ordinary Americans. You need to understand what that is going to do.
You know who the percentages are of who gets audited, though. It's folks like you, it's folks like Senator Bennett
They'll get
who have a lot
audited,
of
but
money.
it's going to be working Americans as well, Kyle. We're talking the Committee on Taxation, which is a bipartisan committee, is telling us that 72% of those audits are going to be on people that are making less than $100,000 a year. That's working Americans. That's small businesses. They don't need 40 or 87,000 to chase the upper 1%. There's a reason why they're putting that kind of number on the ground that's going to shake down working Americans here in Colorado.
When you talk about the idea of diverting those funds to the border, are you an absolute that a border security bill has to address citizenship for Dreamers? Is that a hard line for you?
It is. That's something we need to take care of.
Is there any, I want to return to a question because I think we kind of got sidetracked there when I asked you about President Biden. You were talking about his spending and you're concerned about his spending. My question there was, you consistently stress that you want to work with leaders of both parties to pass things that make sense. So I'm asking you, is there anything blocked by Republicans that President Biden has proposed that you would work with him to get done?
I don't know of anything that's blocked right now that I could help him get done, but if it's good for Colorado, then I'm going to be there for him.
Senator Bennett said that he spoke to the president this week about keeping U.S. Space Command in Colorado as opposed to moving it to Alabama. Are you with him on that?
Of course I am. In fact, I've been talking about that for almost 6 months. I think that Joe Manchin should get some credit for how he uses his vote, and I think Michael Bennett should have done the same thing. He should be saying, look, I'm going to hold up an appointee. I'm going to hold up this bill for Joe Biden until he gives Colorado Space Command. And I've been calling him out. He needs to use his seat to get it.
Senator Biden also said, Senator Bennett. Senator Bennett also said this week that he talked with the president about using executive authority to make Camp Hale and part of the 10-mile range a national monument. What do you think of that idea?
I disagree with that. I think we need to go through the process. For that bill, for that core act to be a good bill, we need to get Republican support on the western slope where that's actually going to take place. And we need to make sure that we have Republican support. There's a reason we use Congress to pass these kind of bills. We don't need an executive order. I think that's an abuse.
If parts of the core act are unpalatable to some people and it's stuck in Congress, as it has been, and there's agreement that something like Camp Hale, which has great historical significance, and portions of the 10-mile range need protection, why not have the president act if it's stuck in Congress?
Well, because he shouldn't act on the entire bill. We should take and peel the pieces back that people can't agree on and put forth a bill that people can agree on. That's the process.
Is that not what's being suggested, though,
No,
with the idea
that's
of the national
not.
monument?
They're saying to put the whole bill through.
So I'm going to have to go back and take another look at that, because I don't believe that it's the entire core act that could be done by executive action. I think it's a more specific, tailored thing. So my question is, what Senator Bennett is asking the president to act on, protections for Camp Hale, 10-mile range. Do you have any, and I think part of the Thompson divide, do you have specific objections to those parts of the core bill or core act, or just other parts?
I would have to look at the exact pieces, but I think that the reality is the locals need to weigh in on what parts of the bill prohibit development and what parts of the bill don't. And that's the important part, is somebody needs to go over to the Western Slope, have the discussion, get support from the Western Slope so that we can move the bill through.
Is there, and this is my last question on this, is there anything in the bill that you see as objectionable, or is it simply, I don't think there's enough public buy-in?
Well, I think we've got to be careful when we declare wilderness areas. If we're not managing our forests, that's where some of the wildest fires that we've had here in Colorado, they go through the wilderness. There's lots of dead timber on the ground because nobody's managing that forest. And then they come into our more urban areas, and that's a problem. So I think that part of that bill, we need to be able to use automation to make sure that we can make these forests healthy and not just exclude all that.
I want to ask you about another environmental issue. You said recently that there's still a debate on how much climate change is man-made. The scientists say that's not true, that they're very confident of it and more confident than they used to be. Why do you believe that?
Well, look, I believe the climate is changing, and I believe man has caused some of it. I think there's a debate as to what percentage is this and what percentage is that, but there's some that's naturally caused. I also believe that we need to move our country forward with renewable energy. We need to raise the bar for wind, solar, nuclear if we can, geothermal. We need to have all of these energies come online. We can't just afford to turn things off before we have a grid that's ready to replace the one that we have now.
You've talked about a 100-year timeline. That's not in line with the scientific consensus of what would be needed to stave off the worst effects of climate change.
Well, what I've said is that we need to go ahead and use good, clean natural gas. We should be exporting that. We should be exporting that to Asia. We should be exporting that to Russia right now. If we were to export that to Russia or to Europe, it would end the Russian war right now.
So just want to clarify, you're not talking about LNG to Russia, you're talking about it to Europe to make up for the Russian supply.
To make up for the Russian supply. I want to make sure that's clear. It's
Yeah.
to Europe. At the same time, it should be going to Asia because they're burning dirty coal over there. There's scientists that are telling us if we were to do that right now, we would lower global emissions by as much as 45% in 5 years. That's something that we should take advantage of. And it also promotes good jobs here on the Western Slope and in America. That's a good use.
Just to return to the first question there, you said that you're not sure how much climate change is man-made. Scientists know, like that's available in papers if you want to read it. Like it's out there. I mean,
there's opinions on it. It's significant. Man-made emissions is significant. I'll give you that. But the debate is over exactly how much. I don't think we really need to know. What we need to know is what's going to be the solution as we move this country forward. And that's where I think we need to put our emphasis.
Recently, President Biden described some of the most extreme Republican elements, folks who deny the election, who have embraced political violence, as semi-fascist. What did you think when you heard that?
Well, first I thought, is that the same guy that campaigned on bringing our country together? There's a lot of issues there. He seemed a little unhinged. I think it's really disingenuous. They spent $10 million in my primary promoting a candidate that they're saying now could be the end of democracy. Which is it? This is all political. And I think it's very disingenuous.
There certainly is a disconnect there where on one hand they're saying these people are an existential threat to the country, but yet we're going to prop them up in primaries because we think that we could beat them in the end. But when the president describes people who don't accept election losses and who turn to violence as semi-fascists, is that true?
Look, anybody that turns to violence should be held accountable. I believe that. There's no room in our country for violence. Elections are how we keep our democracy moving forward. I believe in our election system. I came out right away when I started my campaign. I was down in Cortez, one of my very first events down there, and we had 20 people in the room. I was asked a question of whether or not Trump was our president. And I said, no, Biden's our president. He's a lousy president. I had 5 people in the room get up and leave the room. It didn't dissuade me. I've been on that mission. I believe that's false. I believe we have a good election system, and that's what I believe in.
You've been pretty clear that President Trump would not be your preference as a Republican nominee in 2024, but you've said that you would vote for him if he's the nominee. If attempting to overthrow democracy was not enough to lose your vote, is there anything the man could do that would lose your vote if he's the nominee?
Look, I've been clear. I don't want Trump to run. I don't want Biden to run. I think that tears our country apart.
It's not your choice, though. Your choice is your vote and who you support.
But what I can do, Kyle, is I can use my seat as a U.S. Senator when I'm elected to make sure I campaign for good candidates in the Republican primary so that we make sure that Trump doesn't run again. And that's what I'll do. I'll use my seat to promote a Nikki Haley, to promote a DeSantis, to promote a Pompeo. There's a lot of good candidates out there. And I want to make sure that America has a good choice for a president. I don't want to rehash the Trump-Biden thing. I don't think anybody's. You walk out on the street and you ask somebody, hey, would you vote for Trump or Biden? What do they tell you? They tell you, I wouldn't vote for either one of them. We need to move our country forward, and that's where I'm at.
I remember a lot of Senate Republicans who said that about Trump the first time he ran, and then he won the nomination, and they dutifully got in line. So my question is, are you going to dutifully get in line if he gets the nomination and vote for him? Or would you say, hey, listen, if you try to overthrow American democracy, I'm not going to vote for you?
I'm not going to move our country forward by voting for him. No, we need to make sure that our country is moving forward.
Who's the him in that sentence? I missed something there.
Well, I don't believe either one of them should run. Trump or Biden. I don't want either one of them. And I'm going to do my part to make sure that we have a different nominee for the Republican that runs in 2024. It's a long ways off.
At the risk of insulting both of our intelligence, I'm going to ask the question one more time. Are you still saying that you'd vote for Trump if he's the nominee in 2024, or has your position changed?
I'm telling you right now, I don't want him to run, and I'm not going to promote him as a candidate.
Which is not the question. All right, we'll move on. You're not an election denier. You've been clear about that. So I assume if you were in the Senate, you would have voted to certify the results of the 2020 election?
I would have.
Okay. What do you think of the bipartisan effort to make it harder in the Senate to object to election results? Right now, one senator can kind of gum up the works. There's a bipartisan conversation about maybe you make it 20% of the Senate. Maybe you make it even more than that because it's such a threat to democracy. What do you think about that?
I think our elections should be, we should codify that. We should make sure that our elections stand.
So make it harder for senators to object to elections?
I guess I want to make sure I understand. You know, there's talk that it's easy right now. I want to make it harder.
Okay. You've said that President Trump doesn't deserve any blame for the January 6th attacks. You don't think that he egged on those people to do what they did?
I've said that he does bear some blame. And I've also said it's a black eye on the country. And I believe he could have done a lot more to dissuade that crowd. 3.5 hours to come out and say stop, that's too long. He should have used his position to stop that immediately. I don't believe in violence. Anybody that was violent that day deserves to be accountable, just like through all the protests, the ones we had here in Denver during the summer of mostly peaceful protests. Those people should be held accountable. We have laws here in our state. We should use them.
So now we're in this thing where we just try to impeach every president that comes along. So there were 7 Republicans who voted to convict or impeach. Would you have voted to impeach?
I think that the use of impeachment, because we have different ideas, different motives. There's talk about impeaching Biden here if there's a Republican takeover. I disagree with that. We got to quit talking about locking people up because they have different ideas. We have elections here. Those elections matter. That's how we keep our democracy moving forward. We need to use elections. We should speak with one voice, and they should be out.
For those following along at home, that was a reference, I believe, to Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of the Western Slope, who has already suggested impeaching Biden for this, that, and everything. You've said that the FBI retaking those top secret documents from President Trump's home in Florida looks like a political stunt. The Washington Post is now reporting that there are nuclear secrets involved there. Do you still think it looks like a political stunt?
Well, I talked about the timing of that looking like a political stunt. Here we're 2 years or 2 months in front of a midterm election. I think the timing's awkward. At the same time, I think Americans need to know exactly what took place there. And if Trump has documents he shouldn't have, he should be held accountable.
Last topic I want to bring up, the idea of inflation. There's a lot of talk about inflation. It's a very difficult thing for Congress to tackle, for one world leader among many to tackle. So first, you brought up gas prices earlier. You blame President Biden when gas prices go up. Does he get any credit when they've come back down recently?
Well,
is that him?
They're not all the way back down. Their agenda of ending fossil fuels the day they took office is part of the problem. We haven't created certainty. We haven't created certainty for people that drill for gas, people that drill for oil. And so what are they going to do? They're not spending money on developing more, so that's causing the supply chain to lessen, and that's what causes the price of that to go up. If we flood the market, if we create certainty, they've got good regulations that are over the top of that. We have the cleanest molecule here in the United States produced in the world. We know we can't end fossil fuels tomorrow. We need an investment in that. We need to be able to give these companies certainty. And that's what they're asking for.
So, I mean, what they're doing now with record profits is that they're returning it to shareholders. That's what they're choosing to do with their money, as opposed to doing more development.
Again, go back to the supply chain. If we flood the market, the price will come down. That's how it works.
What else would you see is within Congress's power to tackle inflation?
They got to quit spending. I mean, $1.9 trillion dumped into our market for the rescue plan. That caused, even Obama's economic advisors said that would cause inflation. It has caused inflation. We've got to stifle the spending. We've got to slow that down if we want to get in control of this.
I've noted, though, that you're not opposed to all large government spending. Because, I mean, you took more than $3 million in PPP loans, and you said that was appropriate. Is it like a help for me, but not for thee kind of thing? I mean, because you said that was a judicious use of government spending.
Kyle, let's clear this up right away. I got 2 PPP loans.
And you paid back the majority, and then some were forgiven.
I paid back $2.9 million that went to CEI constructors because we were working. We were deemed essential. I didn't miss a day of work with my employees. We kept them going. Government shut down my event centers here, and I used that money exactly how I was supposed to use that money, and that was to pay employees. I still have 25 of those employees that still work here today, and that's what that money went to. It didn't go to me. It got paid out to my employees.
And I don't think anybody's suggesting wrongdoing. The question is, you were happy to accept government help when you needed it, but then the question becomes, are you willing to extend it to other folks?
Kyle, they shut me for 14 months. I was screaming mad. Let me open back up. They took away our businesses, and that money went directly to our employees.
So the difference in this case is that you felt the harms were imposed by government, so that's why accepting the government help was.
They closed our business. They wouldn't let us open. I couldn't have a wedding for 50 people. We have 25,000 square feet here. That's ridiculous. And I used that money to keep our good employees employed.
Thank you for all of your time. Is there something that you think is really important that we haven't talked about?
Well, I would just end with, look at the last 13 years. $20 trillion in debt, $1.9 trillion rescue plan that caused record inflation here. We have record prices on gas. We have record prices on groceries. Working Americans are feeling it right now. Their wages are not keeping up with that. It's as if they're working for 1 month a year for free. Top that with record crime here. We're ready for a change. We're ready for balance. We're ready for somebody that'll carry Colorado forward. And that's why I'm running in this race. I'm excited about it. I've been a fighter. I've worked all my life here in Colorado to make sure that I could live the American dream. It's time for me to get back. My wife and I want that dream for our kids and our grandkids. That's why I'm running in this race, Kyle. Appreciate you being here today. I hope I can earn your vote, actually.
I appreciate your time, and I look forward to having you on again. Thank you.
Thank you.